So first of all, thank you and good evening. My name's Stacy Costell and I'm the CEO for the Coalition for College, and we're very excited that you decided to join us for navigating the transfer process. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Coalition, we are a group of 150 different colleges and universities that are committed to access, success, and student affordability. And not just anyone can be in the coalition. All of the members meet matrix to show their commitment to each of those areas. And we have 4 of those institutions with us tonight that I want to introduce to you. And the first of those is Susan Hogg, who's Associate Director at the University of Lynchburg. The next is Vanessa Miranda, Director of Transfer Admissions, Loyola Marymount University, and that is in Los Angeles, California. James B. Massey Jr., Director of Admissions, University of Maryland, College Park. And Jessica Marinaccio, who is the Dean of Admissions at Columbia University in New York. So welcome to all of you. And welcome to our students. I know many of you had questions that you gave us when you decided to, when you registered for the program, and I have many of those questions here tonight that we're going to get to. But before we get started, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Coalition and the tools that we have for you as you go through this process. So I'm going to go through a couple of slides and then we'll have all the panelists come back on and we will ask them a number of questions. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, so as I mentioned, about the coalition members and there being 150 different institutions. And as a reminder, here are the panelists who are with us tonight. So if you have a particular question for a school, make sure you throw that in the Q&A box so we can make sure and address it to the right person. Tonight, you may have some questions after the program about transferring. And so just so you know, on our website, coalitionforcollege.org, we have some great resources for transfer students. So if you think of questions later on or would like some additional information, I would encourage you to head to our website to get that advice. So let's start by talking about the Coalition quickly. Some of you may not yet have a tool or an account set up on mycoalition.org. And so I would encourage you to do that, whether you're ready to apply to transfer tomorrow, or maybe you're thinking about doing it during the spring or next fall. It's never too early to set up a mycoalition.org account. All you need to do to create an account is just go to mycoalition.org, click on the Create Account tab at the top, and then you can begin your application. And after you do that, you'll come to this page and we'll just ask you your email, you'll set up a password and provide a few other details about yourself. And when you do, then you're on MyCoalition. And MyCoalition, as I mentioned, you should start even if you're not ready to apply right away, because we're so much more than an application. The first piece of MyCoalition that I want to talk about is the locker. And the locker is a private storage space for your materials and documents. You can always find the locker on the top navigation of MyCoalition. And when you click on that, you'll find 2 choices. One is files, and that's where you'll find the files you've uploaded, or you can upload more. And remember, just about every file type is supported here. MyCoalition is mobile friendly, so you'll be able to upload your phone, or you'll be able to upload a document on your phone or your computer. And because it's cloud-based storage, you'll be able to access your account and the items you stored from any device. The other option for MyLocker is official documents, and we'll talk about that more in a moment when we dive into how MyCoalition transforms into your college applications. MyCoalition is not only a space for you to keep things for yourself, it's also a place to collaborate with others. I mentioned before that the locker is private and secure. You have control over what others can see in your private storage space. But if there are items you want to share with others, you can choose to do that. This might be helpful when it comes time for you to work on your college essay, for example. To share a file, you click on the share icon located in the upper right-hand corner of a file in your locker. And when you click share, you can select any of the contacts to share this file with. Who you add as a contact is up to you. It might be a faculty member, a friend, or a family member, anyone who you want to provide feedback on your college plans, or even school assignments if you choose. Once you invite a contact, you'll get an email. And if you don't have a MyCoalition student supporter, if they don't have a MyCoalition student supporter account yet, they'll be invited to create one to connect with you there. And then there's the college list. The other thing you can share with your contacts is, of course, your college list. In MyCoalition, you can search for colleges, even those that aren't coalition members, and start a list of colleges you may be interested in learning more about or applying to. When you choose to add a school to your list, you'll have the ability to opt into receiving more information from that school if it's a coalition member. This is a good way to indicate to a school that you're interested in them. The profile is where you begin providing information that will eventually become your application. When you apply to coalition schools using the coalition application, all of the info you add to the profile will be pulled into the required section of each application, meaning you only have to complete this information once, even if you're applying to multiple schools. An important thing to know is that the profile and the college list are programmed to talk to each other. So as you add schools to your college list, the profile will indicate which sections are recommended and which sections are optional. So as you've seen, MyCoalition is more than a college application with lots of tools built in to help you prepare for college no matter how you apply. But when you apply to coalition schools with MyCoalition, these are some other benefits to know about. The first is the coalition is committed to making the application fee waiver process easy for students that need it. No one should be prevented from applying for college because they can't afford it. Application fees average about $40 per school, but if you've participated in a TRIO program, received a fee waiver from College Board, or you're eligible for a Pell Grant, you just need to check a box and you'll bypass the application payment page with no documentation required. The second is a feature called Score Send. So if you're applying to a school that asks for your test scores, MyCoalition makes it easy to link your College Board accounts with your MyCoalition account so schools can match your application with your test scores. And finally, MyCoalition provides a way for you to request official documents like letters of recommendations from teachers and counselors right from your locker. So before we go into questions, I want to quickly talk about paying for college because many of you had questions about this. And so some simple information to share before we get started. The first of those is all schools require at least the FAFSA form for you to receive any sort of federal or state aid. For those of you who are currently in a community college or another institution, you may have already filled this out. However, you need to refile that form every year, and it always opens on October 1st. So if you know you're gonna, regardless of where you're gonna go to school next fall, you can go ahead and file that application and list the institutions at this point that you're thinking about attending, even if you haven't filled out that application yet. The second form that I want to talk a little bit about is a CSS profile. This does not take the place of the FAFSA form. Not all schools require the CSS profile, but some do, and they'll have that listed on their website. The profile, unlike the FAFSA form, is not free. There's a $25 fee for the first college form submitted and $16 for each additional institution. This is very in-depth and takes a lot more time to complete. So when you can complete the FAFSA form in about 30 minutes, this may take a bit more time. And the CSS profile also uses income tax information from 2 years ago. So it's important to have all those documents with you when you start filling out that form. And of course, even after tonight, you may have some additional questions about financial aid. These are some great websites for you to go to. I mentioned our website, mycoalitioncounselor.org is where we keep all the helpful information, whether it's about financial aid or transferring. And then studentaid.gov is the FAFSA website where to get additional information. And I think one of the very best resources is the financial aid office at the schools where you're thinking about applying to, or even the school that you're currently attending. So with that, hopefully you will think a little bit about setting up your MyCoalition account after we finish this evening. And for now, I want to get to all of the questions that you ask us when you filled out your participation form, and also go ahead and start throwing in your questions in the Q&A, and I will start asking our panelists. So I'm going to go ahead and ask our panelists to come back on. All right, thank you. And I'll remind you that I think most of you are muted. So when you're ready to talk, don't do what I do and give a complete answer and then realize that no one heard you. So one of the questions that we received was that, what's the difference between the transfer process of public and private universities? Now, I know that the transfer process varies even amongst private schools and public schools. So can each of you just give a quick overview of your transfer process, just so people understand the differences based on where they'd like to attend? And we can go ahead and start with you, Susan.
Okay, you guys can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, so transfer students can apply online. Hold on one second. Can apply online through the Coalition app or the Common app, or through our website. As a transfer student, you must have 12 credits and a minimum cumulative GPA of a 2.0. After we receive your transcripts, it will take 2 to 3 weeks for us to make a decision. We're a rolling admission school. Our application is free, so if you are undecided on where you want to go, please fill out our transfer application. I promise you won't be disappointed. So if you're interested in attending this spring, our deadline is December 19th. For the fall semester, our deadline is July 31st. And that's all.
And do they need to do anything besides send their current work, test scores, or anything like that required, Susan?
We do not require test scores. We really just need your transcript from the current school that you're at right now, and your application, obviously.
Great. How about Jessica?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. And thank you for all the panelists and Stacy for inviting me to speak here. Our transfer application process is very parallel to our first year application process in terms of our requirements. So if people have been through applying to a school like Columbia, it'll sound a little bit familiar to you. We do evaluate students holistically, which is, again, similar to how we do all of our application review. So really looking at all the different pieces of the application that you submit and trying to get a picture of who you are and whether or not you're a fit for our institution. For Columbia, those pieces of the application are a little bit different than what was discussed before. We do require do your transcript from high school and proof of graduation. We do ask for high school information in terms of what your activities were, in addition to your college activities. 2 letters of recommendation from faculty with whom you've worked at the college level, so that's more recent work that you have done. Essay, you would apply to Columbia only using the Coalition application, so that is the only way that you would be able to do that for our institution. And in addition to the Coalition essay, we have other supplemental essays that we would request of you, including one asking why you would like to transfer from your institution. We do, of course, look at grades, and we would like to put greater emphasis versus the first year process on the most recent grades that you have received. Most of our students typically do transfer into Columbia after 1 year of college, though we do have a portion of students who do transfer after 2 years as well. And certainly students who are going to community college, we welcome those applications after you've finished your associate degree. We also do require testing. So again, a little bit different. This year we're not requiring a testing for really anyone who is applying, but if you have taken testing before and you have it in hand for when you went through the application process initially, we would like to see that. If you do not have testing and have not taken an SAT or an ACT prior to applying to Columbia for transfer admission, and our deadline is March 1st for that, please don't worry about taking the test. I think there are lots of other things you can concentrate on and not worry about trying to get those test dates when it's been such a challenging year in that regard. So we'll look at people differently for this particular year, but in general, we do require that. So it is, I think, more of a standard process parallel to many first year processes. And we let people know by May 1st what the decision is, and they have about usually 2 to 3 weeks to determine whether or not they'd like to come.
Thank you. James, can you talk a little bit about University of Maryland?
Sure, happy to. Thank you again so much, Stacy, for having me, and it's great to see the fellow panelists and of course our students. Thank you for joining us. So at Maryland, we do admit students twice a year for transferring to the university, both for fall and for spring. And it's good to know we do have an early action deadline for both terms. And so if you're at this point and you're applying for spring, the early action deadline was August 1st, and we'll notify those students about the 3rd week of October. We also have a final deadline of November 15th, and those students will be notified before the holiday break. And so we try to make sure that students have options if you're still making decisions and kind of thinking about, is this the right time to transfer? We like to make sure we can accommodate you. For the fall semester, the actual early action deadline is March 1st, and we notify those students in the middle of April. And then for the final deadline, June 1st, and we notify those students in July. So we want to make sure you have plenty of time to decide if you want to move to campus, and of course, get through orientation and get your classes selected and be prepared to join us. For all of our students that are applying, we do have scholarship opportunities as well. So we encourage students to apply, meet the early action deadline. That's when you have the best consideration for scholarships. Any students that apply by the regular deadline, if the pool does allow still for scholarship monies, then of course we're going to award. But your best shot at it, of course, is at the early action. And it's, of course, non-binding. It's not early decision or anything like that. For our transfer students, well, we like to make sure that you do know that as well. In terms of what we're looking for when you're applying, we want to make sure that we have a good understanding of all of your academic work. We are holistic in our evaluation process, both for freshmen and transfer. That's our philosophy. And so we're looking at everything that you send to us. If students have at least 30 credits at any time that you're applying, whether it's early action, regular deadline, doesn't matter. If you have 30 credits completed or you're in the process of completing 30 credits, that's what we're going to evaluate you on. We're going to make our admission decision based upon your 30 credits. At that point, you do not have to submit any additional test scores or any information from high school. All of the review process will be centered around that academic work that you've done post-secondary. We also encourage our students always to make good use of the essay, make good use of letters of recommendation, at least one, if you feel that it would help to strengthen the review process for you, and we're happy to evaluate those. If a student has less than 30 credits at any point they're applying, but more than 12 credits, they're still applying as a transfer student, and at that point, we would want to see your high school transcript. And in uncommon, well, I guess we would say common years, we would ask also for your SAT or ACT. We are test optional this year at Maryland, so that means that if you're applying for the spring of 21 or you're applying for fall of 21, we are not asking for you to submit any of your SAT or ACT scores. So we will make the decision based upon your academic work. But again, if it's less than 30 credits, we are asking for your high school transcript. And if it's 30 credits or more, just all of your collegiate work will be fine for us. So it's good to know that. And again, it's for spring as well as for fall. So if you're making plans to join us next fall, the same would apply for you as well. And then overall, it's just good to know that typically our class that we're admitting and looking to enroll for the fall is slightly bigger than our spring class. We have a very, very healthy transfer class that we look for. We actually enroll close to 2,000 students, good to know, for our fall class. And then for our spring class, just under 1,000 students or so that are transferring in to join us. So again, great opportunities to join us on campus. Lots of great things, of course, we can share later about how to get involved on campus, but we would love to have you. So please consider us. Thank you.
Thank you. Vanessa?
Thank you, Stacy. And again, good to be with all of you today. So at Loyola Marymount University, we do a holistic review process similar to University of Maryland and Columbia. We do also offer transfer admission in both the spring and fall semester. And so for a spring start, the deadline is October 1st. It is a priority deadline for spring, but we do consider applications on a rolling basis. So if anyone's interested in the spring, please feel free to let us know. For fall admission, the deadline, and we have a singular deadline of February 1st. And we, again, are rolling admission, and we'll start sending out decisions on a rolling basis as applications become complete, with that priority deadline being February 1st. Academic record is first and foremost. So again, we are holistic in the review process, but we look closely at your academic preparation as it relates to your major. We do review by major, and so we want to ensure preparation for those specific courses needed to, again, be successful in the major upon transfer. But we are, again, wanting to know your story. And so the application process, and you can apply through the Coalition application or LMU's online application. We are also a Common App member. We want to know your goals, why you're interested in transferring, why specifically Loyola Marymount University. We have a statement of intent that is LMU specific on all of our applications, and we also have an LMU essay. And so all of that is taken into consideration along with, of course, academic record. We actually don't have a unit minimum to transfer. What is required in terms of documentation will be impacted by the number of units that you have upon applying. And so if a student is at the 30 or more mark of units completed at the time of application, we don't require any high school information. We're basing the decision solely on your college work. If a student has fewer than 30 units, we would require a high school transcript. Like our fellow schools here, we would require test scores in normal circumstances, but would not require it. We're test optional for the next 2 years. And then again, the applications are a fee waiver is accessible, and I'm happy to help and support anyone who's interested, and again, happy to answer any questions throughout the session. Thank you.
Thanks. Jessica, I think you wanted to add something about financial aid, and we also had a question that I'll gear towards you, and others can hop in. For a student who's been out of school for, let's say 5 or 10 years, what should they think about adding when it comes to like that activity section and other sections for the adult learner who's come back? So Jessica, I'll let you add some information about aid, and then if you want to start with that question, and others can chime in.
Sure. Thanks, Stacy. I just wanted to, as other people were speaking and touching on financial aid, I also wanted to talk a little bit about the financial aid policies for transfer at Columbia, which I didn't cover, and is very important. So if you don't have a lot of people who don't have assistance, you can't afford to necessarily come to the school. Our aid policies are, again, parallel across everyone who is applying to Columbia. So we are need blind for domestic students and permanent residents. We are need aware for our international population, though we do have a lot of funding to be able to support international students. But need blind, it does mean that we do not take into consideration whether or not you're applying for aid if you're in those populations when we're evaluating your application. Our aid is entirely need-based, so we do not have scholarships, we do not have merit money. It's a little bit different, I think, than a lot of other institutions. So that's, I think, similar to probably the journey that you've already been on. We assess after filling out the FAFSA, and we do require the CSS profile. After evaluating that documentation, we assess how much you and your family could afford if you are not independent, and then we meet that need. And we do not package or expect you to take out any loans when you are coming to college. So the same policy that we have for any entry point to Columbia College and the School of Engineering is the same. In terms of the second question about what I would say is we often categorize as non-traditional students who take a little bit of time off before they enter into college. We have at Columbia have a school called the School of General Studies, where that would be an option for you. I don't work particularly with the School of General Studies, but they have a very large population of students who have had professional careers, who have served in the military, who have worked and been innovators for a very long time. And what they do focus on at that point is not necessarily what, high school was a long, long time ago, what you did when you were there, but what is your life experience, and what impact, what does that show about you, your creativity and your innovation, your resilience. And there are a lot of one-on-one interviews and different kind of questions that are asked through that application to really kind of get at the same things that we get at in a more traditional sense through that work that you've done in the job market, or the experiences that you've had with that space. But other people might have something to add with that. I don't know.
So I would like to just piggyback on that. So yeah, we would just want to know where what you've been doing for the last 10 years, just like Jessica had said. But I also want to just touch on, we do have international scholarships. If you have greater than a 3.0, you're going to get $26,000, less than a 3.0, a $23,000. But in addition, we also do have some merit scholarships that range from $14,000 all the way up to $21,500, depending on your grade point average. We have a STEM scholarship if you major in those areas. We have a scholarship day where that's another $3,500. We also have a visual and performing arts scholarship that you do not need to be majoring in those areas, but if you're talented in those areas, you can still get that scholarship. And then the other one is a NOIS grant, which is a teacher scholarship where you can get up to $10,000 to $20,000 your junior and senior year. So lots of transfer stuff going on at Lynchburg. We are a smaller school and we are taking visitors, so come see us. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. So James, this question was geared towards you, but if others want to join in, that would be great. What opportunities do you have for honor students and Phi Theta Kappa members?
Wow.
So, as you know, our friends at Phi Theta Kappa, who we partner with the coalition, sponsor their fairs. So curious, honors programs at your schools, or any other opportunities for those students?
Sure. Great opportunity. So for our students at our Phi Theta Kappa, one, congratulations on the great work that you're doing academically and to be able to get to that particular feat. We do like to offer opportunities for our students that are academically really looking for that challenge. And so our honors college, for example, does typically invite students at the freshman point of entry. So when students are applying as freshmen, they may get an invitation to honors, but they also are very open to students that are just very talented and want to take advantage of the honor opportunities within honors at the point where they transfer in. And so that's just seeking direct admission into honors college, reaching out to them, and then they would review on a case-by-case basis. In a more formal structure, if students are coming in with their associate's degree, there are honors opportunities through each one of our 11 academic colleges as well. So let's say if you're coming in through engineering and you're going directly in within a semester's time frame, you may be in the honors version of engineering within that particular academic college, or you may be able to take what we call the H versions of certain courses based on the academic profile that you're coming to the institution with. So there are opportunities, lots of opportunities for students to be engaged at a higher level, for example, more competitive level, if that's something that you're seeking. Also for our Phi Theta Kappa students, typically you're the ones that qualify for our scholarships. We have merit scholarships that are available typically at about $5,000 per year or $10,000 for the balance of your 2 years if you're coming in at a junior level. Some of our students may come in prior to that and still be able to secure the scholarships at $5,000 per year. And so you need to have at least a 3.0, but typically our Phi Theta Kappa students are at the 3.5 and higher, so they're more competitive for those scholarships at that point. And so that's something you just apply for admission to university, you will get admitted to the university at that point, and then we will look at you for scholarships. So it should follow on the heels of your admission decision. So great opportunities. There are other things that you can always tap into. Great academic enrichment in terms of research. If you want to really kind of get plugged in to research teams, for example, as an undergraduate, those are opportunities that a lot of our students are seeking out coming in. And so all of those things will be made available to you.
Thank you.
Stacy, if I can add, so LMU is a partner with Phi Theta Kappa at the national level as well as at the regional level for Nevada, California, as well as Arizona and Texas. And so we really want to acknowledge our Phi Theta Kappans who are admitted to LMU. And so we actually have a Phi Theta Kappa scholarship upon admission. And so this is a $2,000 scholarship to Phi Theta Kappa's that's renewable for up to 3 years and also stackable with any of our transfer merit scholarships. And Phi Theta Kappa's are academically successful and high achieving students that tend to receive our transfer merit scholarships, which can range between $2,000 to $10,000, again, annually and renewable for up to 3 years. The merit aid at LMU is again stackable and is in addition to other resources that you may qualify for through the FAFSA submission from state or grant aid from the federal government as well as the institution. In terms of the honors program at LMU, our Phi Theta Kappa's, again, as high achieving students are looking for those next step opportunities at the university. And so we are similar to University of Maryland. It's not a direct entry for transfer students. However, our honors program director is happy to work with transfer students who are interested in joining their opportunities. And beyond the honors program, there's research opportunities, clinical experiences open to all of our students, including our transfer students, and we see them taking advantage of those opportunities right away. The other organization that we do have on our campus is the Tau Sigma Honor Society. This is an honor society specifically for students who transferred into four-year institutions who are academically successful. They have to be invited to become members, and then the invitation requires a 3.5 or higher in their first semester of transfer. And so we're proud members and hold the chapter of Tau Sigma on our campus, and every year we have a strong number of transfer students invited and who join that membership. And again, it's an organization really acknowledging the academic preparedness and success of our transfer students on our campus.
Thank you. So I think, a common question with students, especially maybe if they start at a community college, is trying to figure out which classes they should take and best to prepare for admissions, as well as knowing that ideally those classes would help them complete their four-year degree once they transfer. So I'm curious to know what advice you give students in that situation to take the best classes possible to prepare to transfer.
Well, I can jump in initially from my perspective. Oh, Vanessa.
No, please go ahead.
Okay, sorry. And I think just in general, the best advice, you may be starting your college career and you might not necessarily know where you're going to transfer after those 2 years. So I think pursue what you love and really what you want to be dedicated to. Those are the classes that you will do best in, and then find schools where that fits. So I guess I would focus on what you're experiencing now first, and focus and really dedicate yourself to that, and then worry about the credit process a little bit later. Because I think that is going to be really different from school to school. So Columbia, for example, I'm just speaking through this lens. We don't have a physical therapy program. We don't have fashion design. We don't have undergraduate business. We are, the Columbia College is a liberal arts and sciences program, and then we have an engineering school. And so students who have, for example, pursue undergraduate business, which may be what you really love and how you spend your time, probably won't be the most competitive transfer application to Columbia, because that is not necessarily a track that you can pursue. And then the credits, you would not get a lot of credit coming in, because we don't have like classes at our institution. So I think what you need to do is reflect upon, how you would like to spend your time for 2 years, and then find schools that will appropriately match that as you're going through. But I would caution you not to, do that research as you're applying for transfer, because if you do apply to a school, for example, like Columbia, with a more of a marketing degree background, that likely is not going to be successful. And so focus your energies in terms of the application process at places where it is a better fit from the get-go.
And I think I was just going to share that, going along with that reflection and determining what you want to study and finding the schools that offer that and really seeking that best fit. I think once you've identified a few of those schools, and I think it's important to have options, it's then being strategic and having conversations with the admission counselors at those institutions, with your advisors or counselors at your institution, to see how you can create a roadmap, an educational plan that really is the most really beneficial across the different schools that you're considering. Many schools like LMU have course articulations and core agreements with community colleges and other institutions, and are able to assist you in mapping out, again, once you've identified which schools potentially, the best way forward to ensure that you're having, again, the best strategy with regard to transferable courses and the applicability of those courses upon transfer, to ensure that you're not spending a longer time and you have a timely graduation plan upon transferring to the four-year institution. And the tools are available. We're here to help and are wanting to connect with you all and be able to provide those resources. And again, having those conversations with the different schools that you're considering, it allows you to create a plan and see where there's overlap, because there likely is going to be overlap as you're considering various options. And again, we're here to help, and their tools are available at both your current institution and the schools that you're considering transferring.
I would agree with the colleagues and just say that again, doing the research on the front end is only beneficial. It may actually sketch out, as the colleagues were saying, the roadmap and the time frame of applying. You might learn something about a course that you could take that could get you just that much further ahead, or even increase the likelihood that you could be able to go right into the major of your choice. Some schools are much more structured in terms of entree into a particular major, and others are very open, you know, and so you want to kind of know that early on, especially if you have an idea of what schools you might be considering.
And I just want to do just real quick here. So if you go to a Virginia community college, we have a guaranteed admissions if you take a transferable associate's degree program. So if you get your associate's degree in a transferable program, you have guaranteed admissions into Lynchburg. And if you're looking for courses to take, email me or call me, and I will help you make sure that your courses would transfer into Lynchburg. I would also advise, you know, look at the core subjects too, math and English. We always like to see that you're successful in those subjects. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next question is, when a transfer student comes to campus, you know, when you are first applying as a first-year student, there's a lot of information about orientation and really going through that transition process. What does that look like for a transfer student, and what's the best way for them to get involved in student activities and clubs on your campus? And can you also, each of you, add if you have housing for transfer students, and if so, is it required that they live on campus, or are there options?
I think this is a great question. I think it speaks to the culture of an institution. I think that asking that question and thinking of that as you're considering schools is an important aspect of your transfer process. At LMU, we do have a transfer orientation track and events that are separate from our first year orientation sessions. We are understanding that your process, your experiences are unique and separate and nuanced from that of a first year incoming student to our university. And so many schools are going to offer orientation programs and onboarding that's specific to the transfer experience as you're transitioning to their institution. The other piece as what you should be thinking about, I really think it's going in with the mindset of wanting to do as much as you can, getting involved with what you are looking to attain from that educational experience. If it's research, if it's internships, if it's a specific project or area that you really want to focus on, or activities outside the classroom, right? The co-curricular piece is just as important. And so I tell students as they're considering any institution or transferring is to hit the ground running upon transfer. Transfer students are with us for a shorter amount of time. And so that by no means should limit your opportunity to engage, to take the most of those experiences, again, academically, as you're considering your next steps, internships, research, all of that is available to you. And so I think the mindset of going in and being ready and seeking and proactive is helpful as you make that transition.
I agree with Vanessa. I really think that you really just want to take advantage of everything. You know, that's really the answer in short. You don't want to shortchange yourself. You don't want to think that you're coming in and you've missed out on any opportunities. You want to just jump right in. With orientation, we do have orientation available for our students. We want you to meet with your academic advisor from your academic college and be able to learn everything that all of our students learn. And we also work with you to select your courses for that first semester. So we want to make sure that you know exactly what you're picking and why you're picking it. If you have perhaps a second major you're looking at adding on, that's the time to really talk with your orientation advisor about that, and just make sure that you're getting everything you want to get out of it. If you're thinking about going abroad, you know, some students may come in even at the junior level, but hey, they want to go abroad. Hopefully we'll be able to do that again. We all want to be able to do that, but you know, just think about all the things again that you want to get out of the experience, and don't limit yourself at all. Put it all on the table and leave nothing behind.
So I'll just jump in real quick. We do have something called SOAR. It's a week-long transfer orientation right before school starts, and it's mandatory, but it's a great way to get to know other transfer students and learn all the resources on campus. We have something called the Amazing Race, where we group you up into teams and you guys kind of go and find different clues and get to know different people on campus. But in addition to that, I would also, we also have a commuter organization, and we also do transfer events regularly on campus. We have advisors specifically who do that. And we are recognizing transfer students on October 19th. The week of October 19th is National Transfer Student Week, and we're doing a bunch of stuff here at Lynchburg. Thank you.
I think I just to quickly add on from Columbia's standpoint, but really from all of us, is that if you're admitted to our institutions, you're admitted because we see the promise of what you're bringing, and we see the potential of what you could become if you're educated at our institutions. And it is our job to offer all of the resources in order to fulfill that promise. So everything that our institutions have is there, and it is open to you. So people have mentioned research, people have mentioned career education. All of that is there for you, as it would be for starting really at any point. So it is kind of up to you, as it is to everyone, no matter when you start, to take advantage of that. But you're not at a disadvantage in any way to resources or support coming in as a transfer student. You are a full-fledged member of our community. You are a student in our classroom. You are going to be a graduate of our institution. We want to support you to be the most successful you that you can possibly be. Similar to other schools mentioned, at Columbia, we know that it's a little bit different journey for students who have already been to college for a little while. And so we do have an orientation that is targeted and more geared towards students who are transferring in. But at Columbia, different than my peers, we have students only start in the fall, and they start at the same time as all new students who are coming in, no matter where they are. And so the opportunity to join organizations, the opportunity in terms of trying to engage with advisors, all of that really is happening at the same time as everyone else. We do have particular advisors who are trained to work with the transfer population as well. I think you have, unique characteristics in the fact that you're coming in with so many credits, and how do you choose a major a little bit faster maybe than someone else. At Columbia, you don't apply to a major, you just apply to a school, and you figure that out a little bit later, but maybe a little bit faster than maybe some other students who are starting in as their first year. In addition, I think that Stacey had mentioned she wanted us to talk a little bit about housing as well. At Columbia, you do have guaranteed housing for all 4 years, and 95% of the transfer population tends to stay in housing for, I'm sorry, not the 4 years, but the 3 or 2 years that you are at Columbia. And 95% of the population tends to stay within that. I think partially because we're in New York City, and housing is sometimes a little bit challenging within New York City, but also I think because it really builds a lot of community within the transfer population. And initially, whether you're starting as after 1 year of college or after 2 years of college, we do try to house you together so that you can build a community as a transfer population with like-minded students who have already been to college for a little while. So that seems to, I think, work out and build a lot of bonds as well.
Joel, if you just want to talk quickly about transfer housing, and then I'll move to the next question.
Sure. So we guarantee housing for your time here. And as long as you're under 24 and under. And then as far as living off campus, if you want to live off campus, you absolutely can. So that is really your choice, but we do have housing for you.
At Maryland, we have a plethora of offerings of housing. It's not just on campus. but many students may opt for that. If it's something that you're interested in, I always encourage our students, take advantage of the time that you have in the process and apply during the EA timeline. So that way you can get your housing settled and then also move on for orientation. So there is availability of housing on campus. Some is suite style, of course, some are even apartments on campus, but there are so many options right off of campus that's available by university shuttle, walking bridges, and literally a stone's throw from probably where your classes are. So you have lots of options at Maryland.
At LMU, housing is available for transfer students. It is not guaranteed. However, historically, about a third of our incoming transfer class in both fall and spring opt to want to live on campus, and we're able to accommodate those who are interested. Like James shared, it's really making sure that you apply early to ensure that you get your preferences met based on where you want to live in terms of our apartments, our suites. And we do have a couple of off-campus housing options near our campus that are also available, and a lot of our students are opting to live off campus but near campus and still have that be accessible.
Thank you. So the next question is for Columbia or any other universities. If they previously applied for first-year admissions and were waitlisted, is it okay to apply again if they feel that they've grown as a person in the last year? Or do you recommend that they think about other schools?
Since Columbia was named, I'll jump in, but I'm sure my colleagues will have a lot to say from the perspective of their schools as well. Absolutely, please apply. I mean, I think the application process is really assessing who you are as an individual and how you've grown given the entire tapestry of your life. And you know, going to college for a year or going to college for 2 years, I would hope that you have grown and kind of changed and built on those great skills that we saw in you initially. I mean, if you were waitlisted, I mean, certainly that means we saw a whole lot that we liked in your initial application. We just didn't necessarily have room for you at that time. So I would say, you know, don't over strategize or overthink necessarily how or you know what the past has been in terms of applying to a school, but really assess which school is the best fit for you. Talk to the admissions office, see what the requirements are, and apply to those schools. But there's no disadvantage or advantage of having applied previously. We're going to look at everything anew.
I would share the same. You know, we really want to encourage you, think about where you are, what your goals are, and then how we can help you to get there. You know, we do not advise students not to apply. We encourage them, actually. If you think that Maryland is still a place you want to be, or you want to make Maryland yours, as we like to say, then apply. And of course, we do have, of course, that fall and spring application timeline. So the one thing I would say is just kind of think about, you know, when would you be ready to apply? You know, like, you know, taking your courses, making sure you're taking math and English, talking with your advisor, even at your institution, and then even working with us before applying. We have pre-transfer advisors that are available to you. Our admission counseling staff, everybody is a recruiter in my mind in admissions, so you can call us and just talk it through. And we know with our transfer students, sometimes you're talking about maybe a semester or two down the line of applying, and that's perfectly fine. We're happy to work with you.
So one question, as a student is thinking about preparing for their application this year and in this moment, what advice would you give them in thinking about how to best go about the application, or what to think about preparing for even their college search? So, you know, your friend has a student and they call you and say they're thinking about transferring, they're not sure where. What advice would you give them?
My advice would be to go visit those campuses if you can. If you can't, certainly do it virtually, do a virtual tour, or listen to a virtual information session. But by all means, visit the campus. I think it makes all the difference in the world to see if that is in fact the right fit for you. Visit as many campuses as you can, honestly. That would be my big piece of advice.
My advice, it would be ordinarily the same thing, like just go out there and walk the campus. Because I do believe if you walk the campus, you know if it's a yes or if it's a no. And if it's a no, that's not a bad thing. It's good to know. it might be the best decision you ever made that this was not necessarily the place for me to go, because there's another place out there that's perfect for you. But I think in this time, it's such a unique and nuanced time where I really would encourage students to dream big. You know, this is a very different time, and there might be places that you would have thought, well, maybe not that place, or I don't know about the process, or would it be too hard to get in there? Do your research, dream big, and reach high. You know, think about the places you want to go. Don't self-select out of places because you think it's too difficult to get in, or the process is too hard, or even this test optional thing. I don't even know what that means. Here's the hint: test optional just means test optional. That's all it means. It's not really that complicated at all. This is a good time to really research and think about, where do you want to go? Why do you want to go there? And then find out the steps to get there.
I would agree with
the
oh,
first
sorry.
step. I know, Vanessa, you and I are always in the same.
We were like in sync here.
I just more generally, I would say, you know, the first step is to really reflect upon how you have changed over these last year or so in college, and that what you may have been looking for when you initially applied to college, university, community college, the paths that you're on, or taking even time off. I mean, that again, as I mentioned in regard to the apply again question once you've been waitlisted, you're probably a very different person in many ways. And what's important to you, and really spend some time at the forefront thinking about that and centering on that, and then looking at that broad range of schools, as James said, and potentially shooting high as well, that really would fulfill that. I mean, in my experience, I think a lot of, though we don't necessarily accept for a major for Columbia, a lot of students who apply as transfers to our institution really are doing it for particular academic reasons that they didn't necessarily have fulfilled or just started to be interested in just even in this last year. And that is, I think, very different than our pool of students who are 17, 18-year-olds often, who are figuring out, they may think that they know what they want to do, but they're just figuring that out and leaving those doors open. So just reflect on what's really important to you, and look for that in those institutions. So don't necessarily apply to a broad range or to names or who people are telling you to, but follow what's kind of important to you in that, which is advice I give also for first year students, but I think is a little bit more pointed sometimes in the transfer process.
And I would agree with all sentiments here. I would just add that I think in lieu of visiting, given that most or some of our schools are not currently open, it's asking questions. And I think in line with reflecting and determining what is the best fit, or what are some options that you're considering, not limiting yourself, and really thinking about various options and schools to consider, and then connect with those institutions in the way that you can, be it walking onto campus if that's accessible, having a virtual one-on-one meeting with a transfer counselor, connecting with students that are currently at that institution through a virtual panel, in any way that you can, to gather as much information about the sense of that school, what they're able to offer in terms of opportunities, and does that align with what you're seeking to attain in your next educational institution and your academic journey. And know that we're all here to support and connect with students, and ultimately help you make an informed enrollment decision about your next.
Well, thanks to all of you, and students who participated tonight. Thanks to you for all of your great questions. As I mentioned, please visit our website to get more information about the transfer process, or please connect with one of our panelists tonight at their institutions if you have questions for them. I'm sure that they'd be happy to help you. So again, thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you so much to our panelists. That was wonderful information, and I'm sure that our students and families really appreciated your time.